Some love stories burn bright, others smolder beneath the surface. And then there are the ones that do both, igniting in an instant, consuming everything in their path, and leaving behind something unbreakable. This is the story of Sienna Hayes, a woman made of fire, and Caleb Wolfe, a man who carried the storm inside him. A Leo woman who demanded to be seen, a Scorpio man who preferred the shadows, and how one night in a forgotten town, their love was tested by fate itself. Sienna pressed her foot harder on the gas pedal, the desert wind tangling in her hair as she sped down the highway. She needed out of LA, out of the expectations, the whispers, the constant hunger of a world that always wanted more. She had spent her life chasing passion, chasing fire, chasing that intoxicating feeling of being alive. But lately she felt like she was burning from the inside out. So she drove. And when she saw the faded "Welcome to Red Hollow" sign, something in her told her to stop. A small town, a quiet town, a place where no one knew her name. She told herself she'd only stay for a few days. But that was before she met him, and everything changed. Caleb Wolfe didn't do distractions. His life was built on control, on order, discipline, and keeping the past buried where it belonged. He had spent years in trauma surgery, working under fluorescent lights, holding life and death in his hands. But the weight of it all had become too much. So he left, came to Red Hollow, where no one asked questions, where his hands were still needed, but the stakes weren't so high. He had built a life out of quiet. And then she arrived. The first time he saw Sienna, she was standing in front of the town's only motel, the setting sun turning her red curls into flames. Everything about her screamed Leo. The way she moved, the way she smirked, the way she met his gaze without hesitation. Caleb had spent years keeping people at arm's length. But Sienna didn't believe in distance. She closed the gap like she had already decided he belonged to her. And maybe, just maybe, she was right. Sienna wasn't built for quiet. She didn't do small towns, slow mornings, or people who hid behind walls. And Caleb was a fortress. But that only made her want to tear him down. She found him everywhere. At the diner, drinking black coffee in silence. At the gym, punching the heavy bag with the kind of focus that made her wonder what he was fighting. At the clinic, tending to patients with hands that were both gentle and efficient. The town said Caleb Wolfe didn't let people in. But Sienna wasn't people. One night, as they sat by the lake, she finally challenged him. "You don't like me, do you?" Caleb exhaled, staring out at the water. "What makes you think that?" "You avoid me. I avoid everyone." She smirked. "So I'm not special?" He turned to her then, his gaze sharp, unreadable. And then, so quietly, it was almost a confession. "You have no idea how special you are." She kissed him first, and when he kissed her back, it wasn't soft, it wasn't hesitant, it was a battle, and neither of them planned to lose. They clashed as much as they connected. Sienna needed to be seen, to be adored, to be loved in a way that burned through the night. Caleb gave his love in silence, in the way he traced his fingers over her spine when she was half asleep, in the way he always noticed when she needed him, even when she didn't say a word. But passion without trust, it was a wildfire waiting to destroy them both. Because Caleb never said the words, and Sienna needed to hear them. The fire started just past midnight. Sienna woke to the smell of smoke, her heart slamming against her ribs. She ran outside, breath catching, as she saw the town's only bar engulfed in flames. And then she saw Caleb, rushing toward the burning building. Someone was trapped inside, and Caleb never walked away. The second he disappeared into the fire, everything inside Sienna snapped. She had spent her whole life craving passion, but passion meant nothing if the man she loved never walked back out. And then, the explosion. The force of it sent her to the ground. Her head hit the pavement, and the world went dark. The first thing she noticed was the silence. Then, pain. Sienna tried to open her eyes, but there was only blackness. Panic clawed at her throat. And then, his voice. Rough, desperate. "Sienna?" She turned toward the sound, heart hammering. "Caleb? I'm here." His hand found hers steady despite the way his voice shook. She swallowed hard. I can't see." A long silence, then softer than a whisper. "I know." A tear slipped down her cheek. She had never been afraid of losing herself, never been afraid of falling too hard, too fast. But this was helplessness. And yet, he was still there. Caleb Wolf, the man who never let himself need anyone. But now, he wasn't leaving. Not this time. Days passed, then weeks. Her vision returned slowly. Shadows, then shapes, then color. And the first thing she saw clearly? Caleb, sitting beside her bed, head in his hands as if he had been holding the weight of the world alone. Sienna reached out, fingers threading through his hair. He startled, looked up, and she saw him. Not the doctor, not the man who held everything inside. Just Caleb, and he was terrified. Not of losing her, but of letting her see how much he needed her. Sienna smiled. "You don't have to be afraid," she whispered. A long silence. And then, "I love you." No hesitation, no fear, just truth, just fire, the kind that never dies.